Our scripture this morning is found in Mark 12. Now, to situate that, we are now in Jerusalem. So we've gone through Palm Sunday, we've gone through the cleansing of the temple. We're now at the point in Holy Week where Jesus is being challenged by the scribes and the Pharisees. And oft throughout the entire discourse of the second part of chapter 11 and into chapter 12, Jesus is essentially outsmarting and out arguing all of the leadership. And so the scribe approaches Jesus, and he doesn't approach him with a sense of aggression. He even refers to him as teacher, as rabbi. So there's a level of respect there. And he asks him a very simple question. Teacher, what is the basic commandment? What is the foundational commandment? What's the first commandment? And first, not as in most important necessarily, or the head of the line, the first we have to know, but what is the first cornerstone, the basics of our faith? Where do we place everything we believe? And Jesus takes two different scriptures from the first five books of the Bible, one out of Exodus and one out of Leviticus. And he says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one. And you shall love the Lord with all your soul, strength, being, everything about you." And then he quotes Leviticus as saying, "Love your neighbor as yourself." And these are the two foundational laws of our faith. Everything else is built upon them. And the scribe goes on to say, you're right. They're far more important than rituals and sacrifices and all the other stuff that we do to show our religiosity. What an interesting scripture to have on Halloween Sunday. It's a really loaded kind of day from a Christian perspective, although most Protestants don't necessarily know that because we've let go of so much of our history. Catholics have a better chance because they recognize the importance of All Saints' Day and the gatherings on November 1st. But October 31st is very profound for us. First of all, for our Lutheran siblings, in the 1500s, when Martin Luther was starting to voice his opposition to a lot of the activities that the Catholic Church was doing, on October 31st, he went to the Cathedral at Wittenberg and he put his 95 Thesis on the door. Now, that was a common practice at the time, that people would put up notices on the church door. But he chose that day because he knew that the next day, All Saints' Day, people would be showing up and they would be there and they could see what he had to say and a conversation could get started. It's now remembered as Reformation Day. Our Lutheran siblings celebrate. All Saints' Day, the very next day, is one of the profound days of obligation for Christians. It is a time for us to look at the saints, the people who've gone before us. And that came right from the very beginning years. In the earliest years, when there was conflict between the Christ followers and the Hebrews, and there was conflict between the Christ followers and the Roman authorities, and with Greeks and with everybody else, there was times of persecution. I mean, not as many as tradition has taught us or to assume, but they did happen. And there were people who shared the faith. There were people during times of pandemic would go and nurse the sick, often dying themselves. There were Christians who picked up babies on the side of the road. Babies who had legally been left out to be exposed and to die. Christians would pick them up and take them home and take care of them. Teachers of the faith going around, and this is before schools and universities and degrees and all the stuff that we take for granted today was there. So these are people who are embodying and explaining the faith to such a great extent that more people wanted to join the church. And this is a time of unprecedented growth because people saw what the Christians were doing. As a result, towns and villages would highlight their special people and call them saints, and got to a point where every day of the year was another celebration of saints' days. So around the 400s, the Pope at the time decided to gather all of these saints together and have one day of celebration. That celebration started out being after Pentecost, but around the 608, I think, Pope Gregory III moved it to November 1st. We have no idea why. There's only speculation for that. But that was where it happened. And then a century after, Pope Gregory, another pope, decided to make that a day of obligation for everybody throughout Christianity, not just those who lived in Rome. And these were people who internalized the scriptures that we're looking at today, internalized love your neighbor, internalized hold God above all else, above anybody. All Saints is a really incredible day for us, and it's almost forgotten in our church traditions. We really need to bring that back and make that a time. So when you're celebrating Halloween and when you see the kids out in costume and running around and having a great time, celebrate that. It's fun. It's bringing in another part of our tradition for those of us who have Celtic heritage. Even though the Celtic Christians brought the idea of Halloween celebrations and bonfires and running around that night to the shores of North America, there was also an older part of the tradition we now know as Halloween that goes back to our Christian roots, where we recognized the spirit of those who had passed on. And we look at saints, we're looking at people who embodied their faith. And the saints were us. They were not some magical, special people who were endowed with great gifts. They were just ordinary people who rose up because they had so internalized the basic belief that love God above all else with all your heart, with all your being, with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. The greatest of these commandments. After All Souls Day, about the 10th century, and second day was added. All Saints and All Souls was added in the 10th century. And that was a time to look at everybody, not just the people we highlighted as saints and wonderful people, but everybody. This is a time of remembrance. This is a time of celebrating those who went before. And in that way, when the Celtic folk became Christian, they recognized in our tradition of all saints and in our faith in Jesus how to look at life differently. It was a lens that they put on their traditions. So they melded the two together. A celebration that they had of the end of the season, of getting together a family, of hunkering down for the winter, was also a time of reflection and a time to recognize how important our ancestors were to us, what they taught us, what we are now part of, the great tradition, the great roadway of humanity that we have inherited. It's more than just getting chocolate on the 31st. Fun as that might be, when the chocolate is had and the costumes are off and the kids are in bed or people are settled down for the night, it's a time to start to look at how we prepare for the next 2 days. There are rituals that we go through. There are litanies of remembrance that we go through. There are times we can highlight the people. I can think of many throughout my life, the people who stood by me, the people who have taught me things. I remember them this time of year. The person who sat by me and tried to teach me budgeting at church executive meetings. I never did learn, but Ken was an amazing individual, so patient to sit with me, this young 20-year-old who had no concept of what was going on. I remember Gary, who introduced me to concepts in social justice when I was 19. And really, my heart was there, but my mind didn't know enough. And he took me under his wing and he taught me things. Helga, who introduced me to so many issues and concerns that I could be involved in, primarily refugee issues. These are just some of the people who have been significant in my world. And there's hundreds of more of them. And each of us in our faith development has that. These people who are the cornerstones of our faith, the ones who demonstrated to us how to love with all our heart, with all our soul, how to put others before us, how to see God as the center of our being. We're called this time of year with no real trapping. Although commercialism has taken the whole idea of Halloween on October 31st and turned it into this huge marketing opportunity, All Souls and All Saints are pretty well left alone. there's something that is ours that we can recognize and celebrate. Then we get to All Souls as an opportunity to look at everyone. It's an opportunity to look at ourselves too. How do we want to embody the basic cornerstones, what that scribe recognized 2,000 years ago in Jesus' teaching? That there's so much more than ritual and practice and doing the right things at the right time, saying the right words, looking the right way. That the profound part of our faith, our spirituality, is that God is with us, that God is the core of what we do, is the center. And out of God being the center, we are called to love and care for each other. That's what we're celebrating in this All Saints and All Souls. Enjoy your candy. It's a fun time of year. There's absolutely no problem with Christians having as much fun with Halloween night as possible. But we don't stop there. Our celebration is only just beginning.